Hey guys, Tez here and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be sharing my experience working at the Miss Rona vaccination site. Now, as a PCM pharmacist, part of my role has been to help with the delivery of the vaccinations, and I'm going to be sharing what it's been like for me. So I've only been working with the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca clinic, so I'm going to be talking about my experience with those two. I've not had any experience with any other vaccines, so unfortunately I can't really help with that. Now, the similarities between both clinics are that you have to have a specific number of vials depending on the number of patients that you're expecting to come. So each Pfizer vial contains 6 doses. So if you expect 60 patients to come, that means you need to make up 10 vials. However, you need to look out for the patients that don't make the appointment, or sometimes you get extra. So usually when you get to the last maybe 3 to 4 vials, you start making up a vial at a time to reduce wastage, because once you've opened that vial and you've made it up, you really can't put it back in the fridge, so you have to find patients to have that dose, which can sometimes be time consuming, especially if everyone you know has already had the vaccine or they don't want it. And that's also the same with the AstraZeneca vials, where you either get 8 or 10 doses per vial. Again, if you're expecting maybe 100 patients, that means you either need 10 vials of the 10 dose ones. And again, you have to be careful, because once the vial is out of the fridge, it can't go back in. So you have to find somebody to have that dose, otherwise it's a waste, and we don't really want that. The Pfizer clinic is the one that has changed the most since this started. So in the beginning, nurses used to make up the vials, and when I say make up the vials come in like these little pots, and you have to add 1.8 milliliters of saline to make up enough volume to have 6 doses. And so each nurse would make up, for example, 6 vials, and they could only administer those 6 vials, so they couldn't use someone else's vials. So what used to happen is the nurse would use up their vials, and then they would have to come back and make up some more whilst patients were waiting. And then that changed to say that a nurse could use any vial that had been made by anybody. So then it became that the pharmacists, who were before observing the nurses, were now making up the vials themselves whilst being observed by another pharmacist, and that way it meant that the nurses could stay outside and keep vaccinating. And now it's changed in such a way that one pharmacist is able to make up the vials and not self-check essentially, because that's, as a professional, you should be able to do that. So that's been a huge change. So in the beginning I used to just observe the nurses make up the vials, and now I'm the one who makes up the vials myself, and I give them out with the 6 syringes to make sure that the nurses could administer it. So another thing about the Pfizer vials is that once you've taken the vial out of the fridge, you have a 2-hour window in which to make it up, and once you've made it up, you have a 6-hour window in which to use it, otherwise the vial becomes void. So that's why it was really important that you keep track of the time to make sure that vials are not going to waste, or they're not being used past their expiry. With the AstraZeneca clinics, that's not really changed that much. So in the beginning I would take out maybe, let's say, 10 vials at a time, so a box, and then I would put the time that I've taken them out. And because the AZ or AstraZeneca clinics don't need to be made up, they're ready to go from the beginning. So once they're out, they have a 6-hour expiry in which to use them before they expire. So it was my responsibility to keep track of time and to make sure that I'm not putting out vials that aren't going to be used. So it was really important to keep a track on the clinic numbers to see how many people had been booked in, and if there were people not turning up for the appointments, was I accounting for that in the number of vials I was putting out. And they then decided that that was quite technical, and the pharmacists didn't need to do that. So then other people started doing that, and then pharmacists became the clinical lead for that clinic. Because of the side effects of the Pfizer and the AZ being so different, it was decided that pharmacists could potentially be a clinical lead for the AstraZeneca vials, because people are less likely to suffer allergic type reactions to them compared to the Pfizer. So I have been a clinical lead for the AZ clinics, but not the Pfizer clinics. When you're a clinical lead, what that essentially means is that you're responsible for answering any queries that the nurses might have about a specific patient. For example, a patient came in and they said that they had a sort of bleeding disorder, and when they'd had the first AstraZeneca vaccine, they thought they got a clot because they'd had clots before, so they knew what it felt like in their leg and their lungs. And because they had some injections, so dalteparin injections, I don't know why or how, they just injected themselves for 5 days and then they stopped and that was fine. So they felt fine and ready to receive the second dose. And this was when the controversy was going around about AZ causing blood clots. So I felt really uncomfortable giving a dose to somebody who'd had a clot and self-treated. So I said no to them having the vaccine because I felt that they needed to be referred back to haematology for haematology to make a decision as to what dose they should have had. So things like that. Or sometimes is that a patient had their vaccine maybe 7 weeks and 7 days ago, and then you have to decide whether they should have the vaccine today or whether they should wait until the 8 weeks tomorrow, things like that. So it's quite exciting, interesting. I think I had one person who fainted, but luckily because there were a lot of nurses and because I'm trained in first aid, we were able to revive them. I think they'd been so anxious before the vaccine, so they hadn't eaten, so it was a case of that they just had really low blood sugar and it all became too much for them, things like that. One thing I really enjoy about working at the vaccine centres is being able to help patients and being able to help with the delivery of the vaccines. Now I know the vaccine issue is very controversial and there's a lot of people who don't feel like they want it because they don't know what's in it. And I've had patients who've come to the clinics asking what exactly is in it. I don't want to have it if I don't know what's in it, which I understand is fair and people are entitled to their own opinions and you're allowed to do your own research. Personally, when I've looked at the vaccine ingredients, I've not done extensive research, but what I've seen I was happy with. And to be fair, when I was a child I had my vaccines. I don't think my mum knew what was in them. I'm still here. There's a lot of food that I eat, I don't really know what's in it. Even KFC, like, what is that? That chicken is too good. What exactly is in it? I don't know, but I still eat it. So I feel like for me, it's not really a priority to know exactly what's in every single thing that I consume, which maybe is something that I need to work on, but I'm not there yet. And I just feel that with the research that I have seen, that shows that people with the vaccine are less likely to suffer with complications should they develop Miss Rona. That is enough for me and I'm happy to take the vaccine. But this is in no way saying that you should have it, because I've said everyone's allowed to form their own opinion and do their own research, which is why we live in a free world. A scary thing about working at the clinics is that sometimes you're asked with questions that you don't really feel you know the answer to, and it's really hard to anticipate those questions. But the good thing is that there's always a clinical director who is a GP on call, and you can always call them for advice and they're available to answer your questions. And also there's other healthcare members, because there's other ANPs and other nurses that you can ask for support. So it might feel daunting, but I think that because I had all that support, I was able to provide a good service to my patients. So in conclusion, that has been my experience working at the clinics. I really enjoyed it and I look forward to working there again when we start with the booster doses. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or video suggestions. Don't forget to tap that like button so the video reaches more people. Subscribe if you haven't already, because it really helps me out. And until next time, bye for now.